want you all to be encouraged. I want to talk about the topic of how do we succeed. And I'm going to read a little bit to you all from my book, Necessary, a little bit from chapter 8. But before we go into that, I just want to make sure that I talk to you all about some of the mistakes I've made and the times when I did get it right. And there's one particular thing that tends to happen. I've noticed that whenever I get this part on straight, just this main part on straight, it it literally never fails that whatever it is that I'm working on, it becomes a success. And we can define what success really means, but I don't want to just give the answer away at first. I want to first have a conversation with you all. And I want to ask you all a question in terms of what do you think is one of the main reasons? I want you all to comment on this. What is one of the main reasons why you believe sometimes projects or goals that we may be working on? What's one of the main reasons why you think we may not succeed? Can anyone give a comment in here? Let me just see. Can you all comment really quickly and just say I'm here or I hear you? I want to make sure that this live is working because I'm not sure if I pushed the right button or did something right. So if you're part of this live, just comment that you can hear me. And I want to talk to you all. So my question is, what is one of the main things that you think that we need to get on straight in order to succeed in whatever project or whatever goal it is that we're working on? What do you all think is one of those main things that we need to do? Well, hold on one second here. I got to make sure that I copy this link. My apologies. Now I'm coming back to you all. I'm sorry. I thought I had copied the link so the members of my community can see. Hey, Dorothy, I'm glad you can see me. What is one of the main reasons that you think that can hold us back from being successful with whatever project or goal? Now, we're going to kind of flip the coin a little bit and we're going to talk about how do we succeed. But I'll start with you, Dorothy, since you're one of the first ones to comment. But what is one of the main reasons? Why do you think sometimes we run across situations in life where we're going after these projects or these goals or whatever it is in life, and we can have the best intentions in the world, right? But sometimes, for whatever reason, it didn't quite work out. So what is your answer to that? What do you guys think is some of the best, one of the main reasons why sometimes that project or that goal gets cut short? Okay, so Dorothy says fear. Yeah. What else is there? Because sometimes we know that Karina says overthinking. Yeah, sometimes it can be overthinking. What else is there? What is one of the main reasons why sometimes, just sometimes, things don't quite turn out the way we hope that it would? Ruth Ann, oh my goodness, Ruth Ann is in here. I love you guys. I love that I'm seeing people that I already know. Hey, baby. Hey, Ruth Ann. Ruth Ann says, good evening, everyone. So some of you all may already know the answers because some of you are already members of the Necessary Retreat. So if you know the answer that I'm going to give, don't give that out to everybody. But what is some of the reasons why you think that we don't succeed at times? And then we're going to flip this question to, well, what is it that we actually need to do to be successful? So Dorothy says wrong time. Now, I talk about that in Necessary. There's a chapter in here that talks about being hidden, because sometimes we go through a season of being of hidden where God hides us. So you're absolutely right. Sometimes God is hiding us even from ourselves, or sometimes, he knows what's on the other side of that mountain and he's protecting us. And then we also know that there's a chapter inside of Necessary that's called the pruning season. So we know there's sometimes when God is just pruning us, right? He has to cut away at what no longer is needed, right? So that we can flourish and grow. And we all know that many times it's just because, the devil is at work. But I'm going to give you guys a slightly different answer. And I don't think there's any one answer, but this has definitely been one of the main ones for me. So before I give my answer, I'm going to ask the question one more time for the new people that are just coming in here. What do you think is one of the main reasons? And you guys, Ruth Ann, the rest, you guys can give another one if you think you can guess what I'm about to say. What do you think is one of the main reasons why sometimes, many times, you can set out for a project or a goal, or it can be a personal goal. It doesn't even have to be business, right? And you tend to get off track with it. What do you think? Karina says lack of support. Okay. Anyone else? What do you think is one of the main reasons? Anyone else? Before I get to reading, I'll give you guys about 5 seconds and then I'm gonna give you my take on it. Okay, so I'm gonna read a little bit. For those of you who have your book, go turn to chapter 8. And for those of you who are already turning to chapter 8, you know what I'm gonna say. So turn to chapter 8, and that is on page what, 94 in your book. You guys go get the book and turn to chapter 8. So from my personal experience, one of the main reasons, many times when I've not succeeded in something I've set out to do, it had a lot to do with the fact that I didn't know it was mine. I didn't spend time capturing in the spirit what belonged to me before I went and got it in the physical. Now, I know for those of you who are already members of the Necessary Retreat that are already a part of my mentorship program at Unlocking Greatness, you guys already know this. That's why in the very first part, those first 4 so modules, you know how we talk about the importance of figuring out who you are and capturing in the spirit? When I don't take the time to capture in the spirit first what belongs to me, in other words, get that confirmation from God that it actually is mine, that it belongs to me, and I take my butt out there and I try to get something that God didn't show me, it never fails. Either it's short term or it doesn't quite go the way I wanted it to go, right? Or even if there was some success to it, it wasn't long lived, or I wasn't fulfilled with it because I was not doing exactly what God had already showed me in the spirit. I have to know that it's mine. And I've given you guys examples of that before. I'm going to read a little bit from chapter 8, but I'll give you guys an example, a quick example. Remember when I first started my podcast, for those of you who've been following me for a while, remember that? When I very first started my podcast, one of the main things that God showed me when I was sitting in my closet is He placed in my heart, I called you to speak to nations. He even showed me like this vision of like headphones on my ears. And I literally remember sitting in my closet and seeing this vision. And I just remember thinking, but I don't even follow podcasts. I don't know nothing about podcasts. Remember, I've talked about that, right? But God gave me that vision in the spirit that no, I've called you to speak to nations. So when I went out there and I began to speak and I began to, use this little $12 microphone when I first started, right? God began to blow on it because I'm walking in alignment with what He showed me in the spirit. But what you don't know is there's many times prior to that when I tried getting out there and doing some things and nothing became of it. So for me, one of the major, I don't even know if I should call it a secret, but one of the major things that God has revealed to me is I must capture in the spirit what belongs to me. What has He shown me before I go out and get it in the physical? So I'm going to read a little bit from chapter 8. Do you all have your books with you? I hope this chat is working. My chat is frozen again, so hopefully you guys can see me. Karina or Dorothy or Ruth Ann, if one of you all can let me know if you're able to read the chat, because if you're able to see me in the chat, because on my screen is frozen again. But just let me know that you can hear me. So I'm going to read a little bit from chapter 8, and I'm not going to be live for too long because I've gone live on my other platforms. I only have one device with me, and I'm going live one at a time. Okay, thank you, Karina. So turn over to chapter 8, you guys. Let's read the affirmation, Is It Mine? Let's read that together. And that's on page 94. Let's read that. So chapter 8, affirmation, Is It Mine? It starts off, it says, it is mine. God said it is mine, so I shall have it. And what He reveals in the spirit must manifest in the physical. How can I be so certain of these promises I cannot see? How can I walk with confidence knowing that it will come to be? Because He has never lied and He never will. When He tells me it is mine, I shall have it. Nothing will keep me from holding in my hands what has been given to me by my Father. When God says it is mine, I shall have it indeed. Let's turn over and read a little bit from page 96. And I need for someone to make sure they put the passages in as I read this a little bit. I'm just going to read a little bit from this page 96, and then we'll end up closing out the live. So chapter 8, it says, Is it mine? When God says it is yours, period. The question is, are you then willing to go get it? Let me pause there a second before I read a little further with that. Has there ever been a time when God has shown you something is yours? Maybe you had a vision or He placed it in your heart, and yet you still were fearful or afraid to go out there and get it. And many times it's because, of our past failures or things we've been through in the past or whatever. But can anyone relate to that? Has anyone had a situation where God has shown you something is yours, but there still was just this little maybe unbelief, or could be a lack of courage, or whatever it is. But has there ever been a time where you feel like, you know what, I'm not quite sure. I think this is what God showed me, but that's such a different version of me. I can't even relate to that. Can anybody relate to that at all? Okay, good. I see Karina putting a message in here. So I'm gonna keep reading, and hopefully this will encourage you, Karina. So one of the most important spiritual revelations I've learned is to capture in the spirit what belongs to me before I attempt to get it in the physical. It took me nearly 30 years of reading and studying my Bible before I understood that everything must be attained in the spirit before it is manifested in the physical. I had no idea that the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realm were a real force, and there was a real battle that we must be aware of. Can someone write that passage in the comment section? Ruth Ann, I don't know if you have your book with you, because Ruth Ann, I know you've got the book, but write down Ephesians 6:12. If you can write that passage in so other people can get it, because not everyone has their hand on the book. So write down Ephesians 6:12. And I certainly had no idea that as children of the Most High God, we can join him in the spirit and walk in the dominion, power, and authority that God gave us. If someone can write down Genesis 1:26. And the reason why it's very important that you all read these passages, and I've said this before, people will come at you with all kind of information, but it's important that you look stuff up on your own. So even as you're reading this, you don't need to take these things as my word. There's a passage in the Bible that says the Bereans were of more noble character than the Thessalonians because they examined the scriptures to see if what the Apostle Paul said was true. You want to go through these scriptures on your own and look them up and make sure that it makes sense to you and that it goes with what I'm talking about in here. So it's important to write these passages down. Ruth Ann and Karina, thank you so much. So let me just start over with that sentence. And I certainly had no idea that as children of the Most High God, we can join him in the spirit and walk in the dominion, power, and authority God gave us. And that's Genesis 1:26. That's Psalm 8:6-8. And that's Revelation 1:6. And command the earth to yield what God says is ours. Not only that, but we can stand in the authority and force spiritual wickedness in high places to flee. If someone can write down James 4:7. Now, I want to see who can finish this sentence because James 4:7 teaches us, resist the devil and he must what? What must he do when we resist him? Anyone know the answer to that? I'm going to see who's following along that knows the answer. Come on, Dorothy. Come on, Ruth Ann. Resist the devil and he must what? What must the enemy do when we resist him? There you go, Ruth Ann. There you go. Flee. Dorothy says flee. Karina says flee. When we resist him, he must flee. So let me read this sentence again. Not only that, but we must stand in the authority and force spiritual wickedness in high places to flee. That's James 4:7. And submit to the word of God concerning our lives, his purpose for us, his provision, his protection, and much more. Now, the reason why this is really important, you all, I've talked about this before. For those of you who are already members of the Necessary Retreat, you've heard this story, but I want to tell it to some of the newer people that are not aware. I'll never forget when I drove around this building, major corporation, when I was trying to get this account. And I drove around this building over and over and over again, praying that God delivers that account into my hands. I had so many odds against me, it was not even funny. Wasn't even funny. I didn't have the funds to support such a huge account. I didn't have the staff to support such a huge account. And I was going up against all of the major corporations you could imagine, right? So I remember driving around that building, but I remember praying and I remember asking God to show me, is it mine? Show me, is it mine? And he began to give me a vision and show me that this account belongs to me. So I remember I would even go around the company, like even when the company was closed. And I know that sounds weird, you all. And I would drive around it, right? And I would ask God to make it very clear to me, is it mine? Then he began to show me the vision of me actually walking into the presentation and actually getting the account. And so when I walked into that building, I wish you all could see how things look, but imagine a huge conference room, one of the largest conference rooms I'd ever seen. And imagine walking in there by yourself and you're going up against all of these major companies and it's just you. And they've got major fancy presentations and they've got a whole crew with them that they've flown in from all around the countries, all of my competitors, by the way. You get my point? And I never forget, it was a young lady at the door who said, don't be intimidated, don't be scared. And I was like, oh, I'm not. And you want to know why I said that? It's because God had already showed me that it was mine. So when you, and I'm gonna close this out, but I want to make sure I make this point because somebody probably needs to hear this. When God makes it clear that it is yours, there's no devil in hell that's going to be able to stop you. When he makes it clear that it is yours, you walk your butt in that room just like I did. And I walked in there with the confidence that only came from God because I knew that this is what he told me to do. So when I walked in that room, I walked in there giving the presentation as if it was already mine. And guess who ended up getting that account that day? I ended up getting the account out of all the vendors that was there because I walked in knowing that it already belonged to me. Does that make sense to you all? Someone says, what if we struggle to hear from God, and when we ask for a vision, it's not there? Even if we pray and pray and pray and pray. I've talked about that a number. Karina, that's a really, really good question. I've talked about that a number of times, and Karina, I want to be really honest with you. I don't always hear what God is telling me to do. Sometimes I beg and plead for him, God, show me, give me the vision, show me what it is. So I can only answer you just from my own personal experience. One of the things I do is I ask God to reveal if there's anything in me that doesn't look like him or smell like him. Anything in me. And I ask him to remove it, take it away. So that's one of the first things is I ask him to check my heart, look and see if there's anything that's offensive to him. So I always kind of start off there asking him, God, if there's anything in me that doesn't look like you, anything in me that doesn't smell like you, please reveal that to me. Then one of the things I do when I'm sitting in my closet and I'm praying to God, I'm always reminded, and this is something one of my relatives taught me a while ago. She said, Z, even when you go through those seasons, and keep in mind, I talk about this at Necessary quite a bit. Even when you go through those seasons where you don't hear from him, she says, always remember, do what he last told you to do. And I'm like, that's interesting. And she's like, do what he last placed in your heart to do, because it's as if you can't graduate to go to another level until you finish that level, right? Or whatever we're praying for, we need to finish what's going on here at this level. Now this actually can be backed up. I read in Matthew. This is kind of taking me away from what I was talking about a little bit, but I hope that this helps you. I read in Matthew. Chapter 25, the parable of the talents. And I've read that many times before. But one of the passages that I noticed that I have not been reading is Luke chapter 19. And Karina, if you turn over to Luke chapter 19 really quickly, and I don't know if this will help you or not, but this is something that I just didn't realize. When you turn over to Luke chapter 19, he actually gives almost the same parable. In this case, it's called the parable of the 10, I don't know how you pronounce it, but the parable of the 10 minas, or minas. And in this one, he gave, it says in verse 13, so he called 10 of his servants and gave them 10 minas, or 10 minas. And he says, put this money to work, he says, until I come back. Now, the parable of the talents, he'd given someone different amounts. In this case, they got 10. But there's something about this I didn't notice. What I did notice is whatever they was trusted with, like the person that got the first person that got the 10 and went out and doubled it. What I didn't notice is in verse 17, it talks about how God it turned around and put him in charge of 10 cities. And then it goes on to talk about the person that got the 5 talents. I was reading this morning, and it goes on to say, but he turned around and I think put him in charge of 5 cities. That's what it says in verse 19. And then it goes on to talk about, of course, the person that got the 1 talent, and you don't want to know how that story ended. You can read that on your own. Here's where I'm going at with that, because you may say, what does that have to do with my question? I didn't realize that, oh my goodness, when he speaks to us, what he entrusts with us, we are to go and do what he's told us to do. And until we have done what we are able to do with the little bit that he gave us, I've noticed that God doesn't graduate and take us to the next level until we're ready for it. And so what I've noticed when a relative of mine told me, she said, Z, when you don't hear from him, it's important that you really go back and visit. What did he last tell you to do? And how about you focus on what he last spoke to you and told you to do? And that has helped me so much to realize that there are times when I didn't feel God by my side, Karina. Many times I didn't feel, I just, no matter how much I was praying, reading my Bible, studying, going to church, I literally just could not hear his voice. And it's in those moments, this is just for me, Karina, and I don't know if this will help you or not. Those are the moments when I had to realize, oh, he already has spoke to me. but I need to finish out and go back and revisit and complete what he last told me to do. And when I'm doing that, Karina, when I'm in the mode of doing that and revisit, wow, what has God last placed in my spirit to do? I notice that's when I begin to hear my next step. It's almost like the story I just read about the talents. To the person that did whatever he needed to do with those 10, God turned around and gave him 10 more. You know, he entrusted him with something. And when the person did what God told him to do, then he entrusted him with more. So I don't know if that helps you, but it's fresh in my spirit because I just read that this morning. And I thought, oh my goodness, that's the secret in that. I need to go back to what he last told me to do. What was it that he last put in my heart to do? And continue to war in the spirit and ask God to speak to you. So anyway, I hope that helped you. Ruth Ann said, so true. Ruth Ann said, finish what I started. If you turn really quickly to page 97, this is one other thing. And Karina, hopefully this will help you as well. On page 97, this is a little bit of a process of what I walk through whenever I try to attain something. So I said, before I attempt to attain anything in the physical, I first have to be reminded of who God says I am. That's very important, you all. And sometimes I sit in his presence. Karina, I don't know if you still hear me. Oh, Karina says, yes, thank you, Z. Karina, sometimes I sit in his presence, especially when I'm frustrated because I just don't know what he wants me to do. And sometimes I was like, God, if you just speak to me and just tell me, right? Sometimes, Karina, what I have to do is I sit in his presence and I say, God, remind me again of who I am in your presence. And then I do what my mama taught me, Karina. I began to play my gospel songs or my worship. My mama always taught me, baby, in the middle of the storm, and no matter what you're going through, the secret, she taught me this right before she died. She said, baby, the secret is to praise him in the storm. And I distinctly remember saying to my mama, but mama, I don't hear anything, or mom, I don't feel like praising him right now. And she taught me, baby, that's the secret. It's almost as if it's a dance where you're dancing with him, right? I don't want to use the word lure, because if I say you lure him into your presence, it'll sound like you're being manipulative. So I don't want to use that word, but it's almost like a dance of an invitation, inviting him into the room. So sometimes, Karina, I'm just going to keep talking to you, baby. Sometimes when I'm in my room, and I've done this even recently, especially if I'm frustrated or I don't know what he wants me to do, I turn on my gospel music and I literally start dancing around in my room. And I said, Jesus, I want you to dance with me. And he begins to just dance with me. And I know I look so weird, but I'm literally dancing throughout my room, literally dancing around this bed. I'm sitting in my bed right now, just dancing with him in the spirit. I'm not asking for nothing. I just want you to dance with me. And I just began to just praise him and dance with him. And I literally just see him almost smiling in the spirit and just dancing with me. And before I know it, and this always happens, Karina, I end up breaking down in tears. I literally end up breaking down in tears because his very presence, when he's in my very presence, there's something in me that begins to break down and feel his presence. And all of a sudden, a lot of the things I'm worried about and wanting answers for, it just goes away. It don't even matter. But his presence begins to take over the room. And then his fire begins to come up inside of me. And whatever it is that I was holding on to because I didn't have the answers and I was worried, I can't explain it, Karina, but it's as if it just dissipates. It just goes away because now I'm just in his presence. And now nothing else matters because all that matters in that moment is that he's there with me. So that's a really long answer, but I pray that helps you. You got me emotional just talking to you, Karina. Dorothy Williams says that's helpful. I'm in that place right now waiting to hear from God on a decision. So let me read just this one last paragraph and I'm going to get out of here because you guys got me crying. Page 97. And for those who are joining, I'm reading from my book, Necessary. And this chapter is called, Is It Mine? And Karina, maybe you're the reason God had me going live on this platform because normally from Friday to Saturday, you guys don't hear from me at all. This is sort of my resting time, just me and God. But anyway, page 97 says, before I attempt to attain anything in the physical, I first have to be reminded of who God says I am. Second, I have to know if it is the Lord's will for me to have what I am requesting or what he's shown me. Now, one thing I will say to you, Karina, baby, please learn from my mistakes. If God doesn't make it clear to you what the next move needs to be, stay in his presence. That don't mean you don't do anything. That don't mean you don't do anything. But I don't make any major life-changing decisions or business decisions, like anything major, without getting it first in the spirit. I've learned that the hard way when I've gotten impatient and ran ahead of God, right? And made it even worse. So I just want to tell you that. So second, I have to know if it's the Lord's will for me to have what I'm requesting or what he's shown me. Third, I have to actually become the person who has already received it. Now, for those of you who are members of the Necessary Retreat, you know we have a whole thing on becoming the person first, going on the other side of the mountain, having your finally moment. You all know what I'm talking about. For those who have no idea what I'm talking about, you all are more than welcome to join the Necessary Retreat. That's on my site at unlockinggreatness.com. So third, I have to actually become the person who's already received it. And I just gave you an example of that when I walked into that building against all those corporations. And I was literally a nobody as far as they were concerned, but I already became the person that had the account. So, and lastly, I have to take action to get or receive what God has shown is mine. And that's probably one of the scariest parts, because when you're taking action, that's when a lot of that resistance tends to come, a lot of that opposition, right? But when God has shown you that it's yours, baby, no devil in hell can stop you. So I'll end by saying this. Our primary goal, this is just my humble opinion from my own experience. My primary goal is to sit my butt in the spirit, right? Sit with him, join with him in the spirit, and be patient with him so that he shows me not only what is mine, but what is the strategy to go get it. I guess I should have started with that. Not only what is mine, but what is the strategy to go get it. Doesn't that remind you of Gideon in Judges 6 and 7? When he saw himself as the least? You guys know that story. We've talked about it a whole lot, at least 10 times, right? When that angel called him a mighty warrior. But do you remember the vision that was given to one of Gideon's soldiers that night, right? And the strategy, it wasn't that he had more men, because he was down to what, about 300 or so men, give or take, right? It was the strategy that God gave him. So when God gives you that strategy, and many times it may not make sense, right? But when he's shown you it's yours and he gives you that strategy, then and only then do we go forth, right? Does that make sense? And I really believe for me in my life, I'll end with this. That's one of the secrets to being, I don't want to say to being successful, one of the secrets to accomplishing, that's a better word, accomplishing the goal that God has set out for me to do, get it in the spirit first. So I pray that this has helped you all. Karina says you have me in tears. Yes, yes, yes. I'm so glad that this helped you, baby. I did my best to answer your question. I understand firsthand. I tell people all the time, Karina, I'm not a minister. I'm nobody's pastor. I'm not. I'm a woman who loves God with all my heart, mind, body, and soul. And I can only speak to you through my own experiences and what I've gone through, or I should say what God reveals to me to say. And I'm not going to get on here and lie to you all and act like I always know the answers and I know the next step to make and what move to do. That would be a complete lie. You know, I struggle sometimes with God if you would just speak to me. But if you put it on him, whenever I put the cross before me and I hide behind the cross, that's when I really excel and do my very best, because it's not about me, it's about him. So a prime example, this will be the last thing I say on this subject matter. A prime example is like with the podcast. I ain't know nothing about podcasting, Karina. Don't care about podcasting. I don't even follow podcasts, Karina. Never had. Didn't even like social media, Karina. But God is showing me this is what you got to get out there and do. I want you on the radio. Show me in a vision, right? I don't care about that kind of stuff, but he's showing me you get out there and you do it. Does that make sense? And so I get my butt out there, and I don't even know at that time. I know how to do it now. I didn't even know how to set up the streaming for podcasts so it can be on Amazon and Apple and Spotify and all those things where my podcast now streams around the world, right? I had no idea. But my attitude was, God, this is on you. And some of you may disagree with me, but that was my attitude. This is on you. If you want me to succeed in this, and you gave me the vision, and you're telling me this is what you want me to do, and you're telling me I've called you to encourage people and to speak to nations, I'm going to do what you tell me to do now, but I'm not going to stress out about making it happen because this is on you. So you got to provide the provisions. You need to send my helpers, open the doors. I'm going to get out here and I'm going to work hard every day and do exactly what you tell me to do. But this is on you. So I've noticed that when I put the cross before me, hope this helps somebody, because I'm talking longer than I wanted to. When I put the cross before me and I stand behind it, and the pressure really is on God. Like, if you want this to happen, then you got to open these doors because, hey, I'm just walking and doing what you're telling me to do. Does that make sense? It takes all of those, I call it bricks. It takes all of those bricks off of my chest because I don't have to worry about it anymore because this is on you. So when you come upon those oppositions and those mountains that come in front of you that many times stop us, right? Distractions and all of that, right? Right? When you've captured in the spirit what belongs to you and you're walking in alignment, that's the key word. When you're walking in alignment with what God has called you to do, baby, there's no more pressure on you. I get worried and upset and get anxiety and get stressed out when I'm stepping in the forefront and I'm trying to make that vision or that goal happen, or I'm being impatient, or I don't think God is going to work it out. You get my point? Or I'm tired of sitting there. You get my point? But when the cross is before me, my God, when the cross is before me and I'm behind it, it's on you. I'm just here to do my role, whatever you want me to do, God. And those are the times I've noticed in my life, Karina, and I'm talking to all of you all at this point, when God just shows up and shows out in such a way I'm in awe. I'll never forget. I don't know, it could have been 8 months. I don't think it was even a year, but a year or so into producing the Unlocking Greatness podcast, I was at some podcast thing where, I don't know, I was trying to learn something about podcasts because I didn't know what I was doing. But I found out from that meeting that my podcast at that time was in the top 15% of podcasts, like literally in the world. And I'm like, whose? You got to be. I was so shocked. I was like, I know this is not Unlocking Greatness podcast because I didn't know who was listening because I don't even follow podcasts. But you get my point? It was on him to blow on that and do what he wanted to do with it. My role was to do what he told me to do. So anyway, let me get my butt off of this. I pray that this helped you all. Gracie said, I was just doing the Unlocking Greatness retreat and I was watching the section about Gideon. All righty, baby. I love it. I love it. I love it. And Ruth Ann says, Chris says, will this be uploaded for revisiting? Yeah, baby, I'll go ahead and save it on my YouTube when I close it out. Sometimes YouTube takes about an hour before it uploads. And for whatever reason, they don't save the comment. So you may have to comment again. Ruth Ann says, very good information. I'm glad I'm revisiting this chapter. I've received my confirmation. Thanks, Z. Thank you, Ruth Ann. Ruth Ann, you know I love you to pieces. You're my heart. All right, I love you guys. I just want to go live for a little bit to encourage you all. I have one more platform to go live on tonight. Just to encourage some people. For those who do not have a copy of the of Necessary, it is on Amazon. Thank you a million times for all the amazing reviews. I just read some other reviews just the other day. And if you don't have a copy of Necessary, you can get it on unlockinggreatness.com. And you have zero excuse for not reading this book and getting the help you need because the audiobook is available for whatever you want to get it for. So if you're going through a tight time financially and you're like, hey, I can't afford a $27 book, still have no excuse because you can get the audiobook for whatever you want to get it for. And you can get that at unlockinggreatness.com. All right. I love you all. I love you, love you, love you. I pray that you all are encouraged. Bye-bye. See you all later. Bye-bye.